The alarm bells rang through Coalition Station Meridian as Commander Jake Harrison rushed down the metal corridors. His boots echoed against the floor as he made his way to the docking bay. Something was wrong. Ships did not just appear out of nowhere in the middle of space without sending signals. First. Jake had been running this station for 3 years now. It sat on the edge of human space, where different alien species came to talk and trade. Most days were quiet, boring even. But today felt different. Lieutenant Amy Carter was already waiting at the docking bay when Jake arrived. She was the station's expert on alien life forms. Her job was to study the different species that visited them. Amy looked worried as she watched the security monitors. "What do we have?" Jake asked, catching his breath. Amy pointed at the screen. "Single ship, Zephyrian design, but it's badly damaged. Whoever is flying that thing has been through hell." Jake knew about the Zephyrians. They were tall, lizard-like creatures with thick skin that worked like armor. Their empire controlled dozens of worlds across the galaxy. They were known for being excellent soldiers and fierce warriors. But they rarely came to human space alone. The damaged ship slowly moved into the docking bay. Smoke poured from its engines. Burn marks covered the hull. This was not a diplomatic visit. Should we call for backup? Amy asked. Jake shook his head. Not yet. Let's see what they want first. The ship's door opened with a loud hiss. Steam escaped from inside. Then a massive figure stepped out onto the station floor. The Zephyrian was over 8 feet tall, with dark green scales covering his body. Deep scars ran across his face and arms. His military uniform was torn and burned in several places. The alien warrior looked around the docking bay with careful eyes. He moved like someone who expected trouble at any moment. His hand stayed near the weapon on his belt. Jake stepped forward slowly. He kept his hands where the alien could see them. "Welcome to Coalition Station Meridian. I am Commander Jake Harrison. Do you need medical help?" The Zephyrian studied Jake for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rough. "I am Kethver of the Zephyrian 4th Fleet. I seek asylum." Amy's eyes went wide. Asylum requests were rare. For a Zephyrian soldier to ask for protection from his own people was almost unheard of. "That's a serious request," Jake said carefully. "What's your situation?" Kethver looked around the docking bay again. "My ship is being tracked. Zephyrian hunters will arrive within 2 days. Maybe less. Why are your own people hunting you?" The alien warrior was quiet for several seconds. His scaled hands clenched into fists. "I took something. Information that my commanders do not want shared." Jake felt his heart beat faster. Information that aliens wanted to keep secret could be very dangerous. "What kind of information?" "Dada. About your species. About humans." Kethver's yellow eyes fixed on Jake. "My people have been studying human warfare for 5 years. What we learned changed everything." Amy stepped closer. "Changed everything how?" Kethver seemed to struggle with his words. "Your wars terrify us." Jake almost laughed. Humans were one of the youngest species in the galaxy. Their technology was basic compared to most aliens. Their ships were slower. Their weapons were weaker. The idea that human wars could scare the mighty Zephyrian Empire seemed impossible. "I think there might be some mistake," Jake said. "Humans are not exactly known for being scary." The alien warrior shook his head. "You do not understand. It is not your weapons we fear. It is how you fight, why you fight, the things you will do in war." Dr. Patricia Moore arrived at that moment. She was the station's head doctor for the mind. Her job was to help people deal with stress and fear. She took one look at Kethver and frowned. "Commander, this being is showing signs of severe trauma," she said quietly to Jake. Kethver heard her. "Trauma, yes. From what I learned about your species. from the simulations we ran." "What simulations?" Amy asked. "War games. My people tried to plan invasions of human worlds. Every scenario ended the same way." Kethfer's voice became quieter. "Disaster for the Zephyrian Empire." Jake felt confused. "That doesn't make sense. We're outnumbered. Our technology is behind most galactic civilizations." "Technology means nothing if you cannot break the enemy's will to fight," Kethfer said, "and humans never stop fighting." Dr. Moore moved closer to the alien. "You're afraid of us." Kethfer nodded slowly. "My entire species is afraid of yours. The High Command has classified humans as a threat level that does not exist in our normal system." "What threat level?" Jake asked. "Extinction class." The humans looked at each other in shock. Extinction class threats were dangers that could destroy entire civilizations. Things like plague outbreaks or stellar collapse. "That's insane," Amy said. "We're just humans." "Just humans," Kethfer repeated. "Do you know what your military history looks like to alien eyes? Do you understand how your wars appear to species that fight for logical reasons?" Jake was starting to feel uneasy. "Explain." Kethfer walked to a nearby wall and leaned against it. His massive frame seemed tired. "Most species fight wars for territory, for resources, for power. These are logical goals. When the cost becomes too high, they stop fighting." "That sounds reasonable," Dr. Moore said. "Humans fight for ideas," Kethfer continued. "For freedom, for justice, for revenge, for the memory of the dead. These are not logical goals. They cannot be satisfied by surrender or negotiation." Amy crossed her arms. "So what?" "So humans will fight until they die, rather than give up these ideas. Your soldiers throw themselves on explosives to save others. They fight impossible battles to buy time for civilians to escape. They continue fighting even when their commanders are dead, and their cause seems lost." Jake began to understand what the alien was getting at. "You're saying we fight differently." "I am saying you fight like madmen," Kethfer said bluntly. "And madmen cannot be defeated by conventional warfare." The sound of approaching footsteps made everyone turn. More station security had arrived, but Kethfer did not seem worried about them. "Commander Harrison," the alien said, "I have stolen classified files from the Zephyrian Military Command. Information about our research into human warfare, our invasion plans, our psychological studies of your species. Why steal that information?" Jake asked. "Because I believe my people are planning to attack humanity before you become too dangerous to stop. And after studying your wars, I know such an attack would destroy both our civilizations." Dr. Moore stepped forward. "You're trying to prevent a war." "I am trying to prevent the end of everything," Kethfer said. "Because once a war between Zephyrians and humans begins, it will never truly end. Your species does not know how to quit." Jake looked at Amy and Dr. Moore. This was far beyond anything he had expected when he woke up that morning. An alien soldier was asking for protection while carrying stolen military secrets. And he claimed those secrets showed that humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. "If we grant you asylum," Jake said slowly, "will you share this information with us?" "That is why I came here," Kethfer replied. "But you must understand, once you know what my people learned about human warfare, you cannot unknow it. And it may change how you see yourselves forever." Jake felt a chill run down his spine, but he knew they had no choice. If war was coming, they needed to understand why. "We'll protect you," Jake said. "Now tell us what you know about our wars." Kethfer nodded grimly. "Prepare yourself, Commander. The truth about human warfare is more terrifying than you can imagine." 3 hours later, Jake sat in the station's secure meeting room with his team. The room had thick walls and no windows. Special equipment blocked any signals from getting in or out. If they were going to hear classified alien secrets, they needed privacy. Captain Lisa Bennett had arrived from Earth on the fastest ship available. She used to be a Marine before becoming an intelligence analyst. Her job was to study enemy tactics and find weaknesses. Lisa had short brown hair and sharp eyes. That missed nothing. Cuthbert sat across from them at the metal table. The alien warrior looked even more tired than before. Dr. Moore had given him some basic medical care, but his wounds were mostly healed anyway. Zephyrians recovered from injuries much faster than humans. Before we start, Jake said, I need to know something. How many of your people know about this research? The entire Zephyrian High Command, Cuthbert replied, plus their top military advisors. Perhaps 200 individuals in total? Lisa leaned forward. And they all agree that humans are dangerous. They are terrified of your species, Cuthbert said simply. Some wanted to attack immediately. Others argued for complete avoidance. None suggested treating humans as equals. Amy activated a recording device. We're ready to hear what you know. Cuthbert reached into his damaged uniform and pulled out a small crystal device. This contains 5 years of research. Video files, analysis reports, psychological studies. Everything my people learned about human warfare. He placed the crystal into a reader on the table. Holographic images appeared in the air above them. The first image showed a map of human space with various Earth conflicts marked in red. We began by studying your major wars, Cuthbert explained. World War II caught our attention first. The scale was impressive for such a young civilization. The hologram changed to show battle scenes from the war, tanks rolling across fields, soldiers storming beaches, cities in flames. But the images had been analyzed by alien computers. Strange symbols and numbers floated around the pictures. What are those markings? Jake asked. Zephyrian tactical analysis, Cuthbert said. We tried to understand your strategies. At first, we thought humans fought like any other species, for territory and resources. Lisa studied the floating symbols. But something changed your minds. Yes, we found patterns that made no sense. Cuthbert pointed at one image showing soldiers advancing under heavy fire. Here, your forces continue attacking even when losses exceed acceptable limits. Dr. Moore frowned. What do you mean by acceptable limits? Most species stop fighting when casualties reach 15 to 20%, Cuthbert explained. At that point, the survivors retreat or surrender. It is logical. The hologram showed new data, numbers and charts floating in the air. Amy gasped when she saw some of the figures. According to this, Amy said, humans sometimes keep fighting even when casualties reach 50% or higher. 70% in some cases, Cuthbert confirmed. We found records of human units fighting until only a few soldiers remained alive. This behavior puzzled our analysts. Jake felt uncomfortable looking at the data. He knew human history could be brutal, but seeing it analyzed by aliens made it seem different somehow. We studied more conflicts, Cuthbert continued. Vietnam, Korea, ancient Roman campaigns. The pattern was always the same. New images appeared. Jungle warfare, desert battles, ancient armies clashing with swords and shields, all marked with alien analysis symbols. Humans fight for reasons that other species consider insane, Cuthbert said. You will die for strangers. You will sacrifice yourself for abstract concepts like freedom or honor. Lisa crossed her arms. Those aren't insane reasons. To Zephyrian minds, they are incomprehensible, Cuthbert replied. We fight to gain something concrete, territory, resources, reading rights. When the cost exceeds the benefit, we stop. The hologram changed again. This time it showed psychological profiles. brain scans and behavioral charts with alien text scrolling beside them. "We tried to understand the human mind during warfare," Kethver said. "What we found disturbed our scientists." Dr. Moore leaned closer to study the brain scans. "These look like stress response patterns." "Yes, but not normal stress," Kethver explained. "When most species face hopeless situations in battle, their brains trigger surrender responses. Fight or flight becomes just flight. And humans?" Jake asked, though. He was starting to guess the answer. Human brains do the opposite. Hopeless situations make humans more determined to fight. Your stress chemicals increase aggression instead of promoting escape. Amy shook her head. "That sounds like core evolutionary design." "We thought so too," Kethver said, "until we realized what it means in practice." The hologram showed new data. Simulation results with thousands of calculations. Red numbers indicated Zephyrian losses. Blue numbers showed human casualties. "We ran computer simulations of various invasion scenarios," Kethver continued. "Zephyrian forces attacking human colonies. Every simulation produced the same result." Lisa studied the numbers. "You lose." "Worse than lose," Kethver corrected. "We discovered that fighting humans is like fighting a fire. The more you attack it, the larger it becomes." Jake didn't understand. "Explain that." "When Zephyrians attack other species, resistance decreases over time. People surrender when they realize they cannot win, but humans work differently." The hologram showed a timeline. As simulated battles continued, human resistance actually increased instead of decreasing. "Human populations become more violent when attacked," Kethver said. "Civilians become soldiers. Children learn to make weapons. Entire planets transform into military bases." Dr. Moore looked disturbed. "You're describing total war." "We had no concept for total war before studying humans," Kethver admitted. "Most galactic civilizations separate military and civilian populations. Warriors fight, others do not." Amy pointed at the simulation data. "But humans don't make that distinction, correct? When threatened, all humans become potential combatants. Farmers become bomb makers. Teachers become spies. Scientists create new weapons." Lisa was studying the tactical analysis. "What scared your commanders the most?" Kethver was quiet for a moment. "The creativity? Creativity? Other species follow established military doctrines, proven tactics, predictable strategies." Kethver gestured at the holographic data. "Humans improvise constantly. New images appeared showing various human weapons and tactics. But these weren't normal military equipment. Household items converted into explosives. Civilian vehicles turned into weapons. Children's toys modified for warfare. We found records of humans weaponizing everything," Kethver said. "Farming tools, kitchen knives, cleaning chemicals. Even musical instruments have been used as weapons in human conflicts." Jake felt a strange mix of pride and horror. "We're resourceful. You are terrifying," Kethver corrected. "Zephyrian military doctrine depends on controlling key weapons and supplies. But humans can turn anything into a weapon." The hologram changed to show psychological profiles again. This time, they focused on something called motivation analysis. "Perhaps most disturbing of all," Kethver continued, "we discovered that humans fight harder for others than for themselves." Dr. Moore raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Zephyrian soldiers fight to survive and advance their own status. Human soldiers fight to protect people they may never meet. This creates impossible tactical situations." Lisa was beginning to understand. "Because you can't predict what will motivate human fighters." "Exactly. How do you defeat an enemy who becomes more dangerous when you threaten what they care about? How do you negotiate with people who consider some things more important than their own lives?" The room fell silent as the humans absorbed what they were hearing. The alien analysis of human warfare painted a picture of their species that was both flattering and deeply disturbing. Jake looked at the data floating in the air. Numbers and charts that showed his species was considered a galactic threat. What did your high command decide to do with this information? Kethfer's expression grew darker. That is what we must discuss next. Because their decision threatens both our civilizations. Amy felt a chill. They're planning to attack us, aren't they? Some are, Kethfer confirmed. They believe humans must be eliminated before you become too powerful to stop. And the others? Jake asked. They believe humans are already too dangerous to fight. They want to avoid contact entirely. Lisa stood up from her chair. Both options sound like they end badly for humanity. Kethfer nodded grimly. Which is why I stole this data and came here. Because there is a third option that no one has considered. What's that? Dr. Moore asked. Learning to coexist with the most dangerous species the galaxy has ever seen. The next morning brought a new face to the meeting room. Major Chris Sullivan arrived from Earth Defense Command with orders to learn everything possible about the Zephyrian research. Chris was tall and thin with gray hair and calm eyes. He had spent 20 years planning military strategies for human forces. Major Sullivan specializes in war planning, Jake explained to Kethfer. He needs to understand what your people discovered about our tactics. Kethfer looked tired. He had not slept well, despite Dr. Moore's efforts to help him rest. The alien warrior kept watching the doors, as if expecting Zephyrian hunters to burst through at any moment. We should continue, Kethfer said. My people will arrive soon. Chris sat down and opened a notebook. I want to know about your war games. The simulations you mentioned yesterday. Kethfer activated the crystal device again. New holographic images filled the air above the table. This time they showed detailed battle scenarios with moving figures representing ships and soldiers. We created hundreds of invasion simulations, Kethfer explained. Different scenarios. Various human worlds and colony planets. Multiple attack strategies. Lisa studied the moving hologram. What was the goal? Complete conquest with minimal Zephyrian losses, Kethfer replied. Standard procedure for expanding our empire. The hologram showed Zephyrian fleets attacking human settlements. Alien ground forces landing on planets. The simulations looked detailed and realistic. At first, the results seemed normal, Kethfer continued. Zephyrian technology is superior. Our weapons are more advanced. Our soldiers are stronger and better armored. Chris watched the simulation carefully, but something went wrong. Everything went wrong. The hologram changed to show longer time periods. Weeks and months instead of days. As time passed in the simulation, the Zephyrian advantage began to disappear. Human resistance increased instead of decreasing, Kethfer explained. Every month of occupation required more Zephyrian troops. Every year brought new forms of rebellion. Amy pointed at the numbers floating beside the simulation. These casualty figures keep climbing. Yes, we discovered that conquering humans is only the beginning of the problem. Holding human territory becomes impossible over time. Dr. Moore leaned forward. Why? Because humans never accept defeat, Kethfer said simply. Other species surrender when their military is destroyed. Humans just change how they fight. The simulation showed this transformation. After regular human forces were defeated, civilian populations began guerrilla warfare. Small groups attacking supply lines, sabotage of important facilities, assassination of occupation leaders. We found historical examples of this behavior, Kethfer continued. Human resistance movements that lasted for decades. Some continued fighting for generations. Chris was taking notes rapidly. What made it so effective? Humans have no clear command structure in resistance warfare. Kill the leaders and new. Ones appear, destroy one cell, and 3 more form. It becomes like fighting shadows. The hologram showed a particularly disturbing simulation. Zephyrian forces controlled all major human cities and military bases. But small human groups continued, operating from forests, mountains, and underground tunnels. In this scenario, Kethver explained, we calculated that maintaining control of one human world would require a permanent garrison of 2 million Zephyrian soldiers. Lisa whistled softly. That's a huge commitment. For one planet, Kethve emphasized. Humans control dozens of worlds. The mathematics become impossible. Jake was beginning to understand the scope of the problem. You would need your entire military just to hold human territory. Worse, our analysts concluded that conquering humanity would require more soldiers than our empire possesses. Chris looked up from his notes. What about the psychological impact on your troops? Kethver's expression grew darker. That was the most disturbing discovery of all. The hologram changed to show psychological evaluation data. Charts and graphs tracking the mental health of simulated Zephyrian soldiers. We conducted training exercises where our troops role-played as humans, Kethver explained. The results were catastrophic. Dr. Moore studied the psychological data. What happened? Zephyrian soldiers could not understand human motivations. Fighting for abstract concepts like freedom or justice made no sense to them. Many suffered mental breakdown. The data showed increasing rates of stress disorders, depression, and combat refusal among Zephyrian troops exposed to human-style warfare scenarios. Our soldiers are trained to fight for logical goals, Kethvar continued. Personal advancement, territorial gain, resource acquisition. When ordered to fight for ideas they could not comprehend, their performance deteriorated rapidly. Amy was reading the psychological profiles. Some of these soldiers refused to continue the exercises. 30% withdrew from the program, Kethver confirmed. They claimed that pretending to be human was damaging their mental health. Chris found this fascinating. Your people couldn't even pretend to fight like humans? The concept was too alien. Literally dying for strangers violates every Zephyrian instinct. Self-sacrifice for abstract principles appears to be uniquely human behavior. The hologram shifted to show recorded footage from the training exercises. Zephyrian soldiers attempting to follow human tactical doctrines. The confusion and distress on their faces was obvious even to human observers. We also discovered that human tactics depend heavily on individual initiative, Kethver explained. Soldiers making independent decisions without orders from command. Lisa nodded. That's standard practice for human forces. It is impossible for Zephyrian forces, Kethver replied. Our military relies on strict hierarchy and detailed orders. Soldiers who act independently are considered defective. Jake was starting to see a pattern. So human unpredictability becomes a massive advantage. Correct. Our battle computers cannot calculate human responses because human logic is not logical by our standards. The hologram showed more simulation data. Battle scenarios where human forces did things that Zephyrian computers labeled as irrational or impossible. Here, Kethver pointed at one scene, human soldiers advance into certain death to rescue wounded comrades. Our simulations did not account for this behavior. Chris was fascinated, because Zephyrian soldiers wouldn't make that choice. Never. A wounded soldier is a liability. Risking additional casualties for someone already injured violates basic military efficiency. Dr. Moore looked troubled. But humans do it regularly, constantly, and it makes predicting human battle outcomes nearly impossible. The data showed dozens of examples. Human forces achieving victories that Zephyrian computers calculated as having 0 probability of success. The final simulation was the most disturbing. Kethver said quietly. The hologram changed to show a massive space battle. Hundreds of ships engaged in combat around a human colony world. We simulated a full-scale war between our civilizations, Kethver explained. Total warfare with no restrictions. The battle simulation was intense. Zephyrian fleets with superior technology facing larger numbers of human ships. At first, the aliens seemed to be winning. For the first year of simulated war, Zephyrian, forces achieved consistent victories, Kethver said. But watch what happens over time. The simulation continued. As months passed, human tactics began to change. New ship designs appeared. Unusual battle strategies emerged. Most disturbing of all, human forces began using kamikaze attacks. Suicide tactics, Chris observed. Something we had never encountered before, Kethver confirmed. The willingness to sacrifice ships and crews for tactical advantage. Amy watched in horror as human ships deliberately rammed Zephyrian vessels. This is terrible. It is also incredibly effective, Kethver said. Grimly. Our fleet commanders could not adapt to facing enemies willing to die for minor tactical gains. The simulation showed the psychological impact on Zephyrian forces. Morale declining. Commanders becoming paralyzed by impossible decisions. Some ships refusing to engage human forces at all. The final result? Jake asked, though he dreaded the answer. Complete Zephyrian defeat after 8 years of warfare. Not through military superiority, but through psychological collapse. Lisa was studying the final casualty figures. Both sides lost millions. Yes, but humans were prepared to continue fighting indefinitely. Zephyrians or not. The hologram faded, leaving the room in normal lighting. The humans sat in stunned silence, absorbing what they had learned. This is why some of our leaders want to eliminate humanity immediately, Kethver said, before you develop better technology to match your tactical advantages. Chris closed his notebook. And the others? They believe it is already too late. That any conflict with humanity will result in mutual destruction. Dr. Moore looked pale. Both options lead to war. Unless we find a third path, Kethver said. Which is why I brought this information to you. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. The fate of 2 civilizations might depend on what happened in this room. What do you propose? Jake asked. That we work together to convince both our peoples that coexistence is possible, Kethver replied. Before fear and misunderstanding destroy us all. An alarm began ringing throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors outside. Colonel Ryan Murphy arrived at Coalition Station Meridian, just as the Zephyrian hunter ships entered weapons range. His transport docked quickly while the station's defense systems powered up. Ryan represented Earth Defense Command and carried orders from the highest levels of human government. Status report, Ryan demanded as he entered the secure meeting room. The colonel was a veteran of 3 wars, with short gray hair and steady hands that never shook, even under pressure. 3. Zephyrian warships in attack formation, Jake reported. They're demanding we surrender Kethver immediately. The alien warrior sat calmly at the table, despite the danger. They will not negotiate. Zephyrian hunters never return without their target. Dr. Rachel Kim entered the room carrying data tablets and portable computers. She was a military historian who specialized in studying ancient and modern warfare. Earth Defense had sent her to analyze the Zephyrian research findings. I've been reviewing the files Kethver provided, Rachel said. Quickly. The implications are staggering. Ryan took a seat at the table. Explain. Rachel activated her portable display. Charts and graphs appeared showing human military history, analyzed through alien perspectives. The Zephyrians have identified something that we never recognized about ourselves. Which is? Chris asked. We don't just wage war, Rachel said quietly. We become war itself. Kethver nodded grimly. That is the conclusion my people reached. Other species use warfare as a tool. Humans transform themselves into living weapons. The station shook slightly as the Zephyrian ships moved closer. Jake could hear his crew preparing defensive positions throughout the corridors. Tell me about this transformation, Ryan said to Rachel. Rachel pulled up new data on her display. According to Zephyrian analysis, humans undergo fundamental psychological changes during extended conflicts. We become different creatures entirely. The display showed brain scan comparisons. Human soldiers before combat and after months of warfare. The differences were dramatic. Combat rewires human brains, Rachel explained, but not in ways that reduce effectiveness. The changes make us more dangerous over time. Kethver pointed at the brain scans. This was the most terrifying discovery. Most species become less effective fighters as wars continue. Fatigue and trauma reduce their capabilities. But humans get better at war the longer it lasts, Ryan observed. Exactly, Kethver confirmed. Your species learns and adapts during combat. Each battle makes human forces more lethal. Dr. Moore was studying the psychological data. This explains why human resistance movements become more effective over time. Yes, Rachel agreed. The Zephyrians found that occupying human territory actually trains human civilians to become better insurgents. The station shook again, more violently this time. The Zephyrian ships were charging their weapons. Jake activated the communication system. Zephyrian vessels, this is Commander Harrison. Kethver has requested asylum under galactic law. We cannot surrender him without proper legal proceedings. The reply came immediately in heavily accented English. Commander Harrison, you harbor a traitor and thief. Surrender him now or face the consequences. Ryan looked at Jake. How long can your station hold against 3 warships? Maybe an hour, Jake admitted. We're not built for major combat. Kethver stood up slowly. I should surrender myself. This station and its crew should not die for my choices. Sit down, Ryan said firmly. We're not giving up anyone. Amy was monitoring the approaching ships. They're powering weapon systems. 30 seconds to firing range. Rachel looked up from her data. Colonel, there's something else you need to know about the Zephyrian research. What? They've been studying current human military capabilities, too. Not just historical wars. Kethver nodded. My people have intercepted human communications, observed military exercises, analyzed modern tactical doctrine. The implications hit Ryan immediately. They know our current defensive capabilities. Everything, Kethver confirmed. Troop numbers, ship locations, weapons technology, strategic plans. Chris felt his stomach drop. That's enough intelligence to plan a complete invasion, which is exactly what some Zephyrian leaders want to do, Kethver said. Strike before humans develop technology to match their tactical advantages. The station's defense systems activated automatically. Energy shields powered up around the hull. Weapon batteries rotated toward the approaching threats. Jake opened communication channels to Earth. Emergency transmission to Defense Command. We have intelligence of highest priority. Possible alien invasion threat. But the Zephyrian ships were jamming most signals. Only local communications were working. They're blocking our transmissions, Amy reported. Rachel was still analyzing data on her displays. Colonel, according to this research, the Zephyrians have been planning this for years. Planning what specifically? Ryan asked. A preemptive strike against Earth and all human colonies. Total elimination before we become too dangerous to stop. Kethver confirmed this with a nod. The debate in our high command was not whether to attack. It was when Dr. Moore looked horrified. Genocide. From their perspective, it is self-defense, Kethvar explained. They genuinely believe humans will destroy their civilization if it allowed to grow stronger. The first energy blast from the Zephyrian ships struck the station's shields. Lights flickered throughout the corridors. Emergency alarms began ringing. Shields down to 80%, Amy reported. Ryan was thinking. Quickly, is there any way to stop this invasion plan? Only one, Kethvar said. Proof that humans and Zephyrians can coexist peacefully. How do we provide that proof? Jake asked while coordinating defensive efforts. Rachel looked up from her data. Analysis. By showing them something they never considered in their research, which is that human warfare abilities can be used for protection instead of conquest. Another blast hit the station. The shields held but were weakening rapidly. Chris understood what Rachel was suggesting. We show them that humans fight to protect others, not just to destroy enemies. Exactly, Rachel confirmed. The Zephyrian research focused on human aggression. They never studied human defensive motivations. Kethvar looked thoughtful. You mean demonstrating that humans can be allies instead of threats? But how do we do that while under attack? Jake asked. Ryan was already forming a plan. By protecting. Kethvar. By showing that humans will risk their lives to save even former enemies who seek our help. The third blast severely damaged the station's outer hull. Sections began losing atmosphere. Emergency crews rushed to seal breaches. Shields failing, Amy reported. Next hit will penetrate our defenses. Jake made a decision. All hands, prepare for evacuation. Get the civilians to escape pods. No, Ryan said firmly. We stay and fight. Colonel, we can't win against 3 warships, Jake protested. We're not trying to win, Ryan replied. We're trying to prove a point. Kethvar understood immediately. You would die to protect me, even though I am Zephyrian. That's right, Ryan confirmed. And maybe that will show your people something they missed in all their research. Rachel was monitoring communications from the attacking ships. The Zephyrian commanders are confused. They expected us to surrender Kethvar immediately. Human. Logic, Dr. Moore said with a slight smile. Incomprehensible to alien minds. The fourth blast breached the station's shields entirely. Sections of the hull were torn open. But the humans continued defensive operations without offering to surrender their guest. They're hailing us again, Amy reported. Jake opened the channel. This is Commander Harrison. Commander, your position is hopeless. Surrender the traitor, and we will allow your evacuation. Negative, Jake replied. Kethvar has requested asylum. We will honor that request. A long pause followed. Then a different voice came over the communication system, older and more authoritative than the first. Commander Harrison, I am Fleet. Admiral Vekmer of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy. Why do you protect one who is not of your species? Ryan took over the communication. Admiral, this is Colonel Murphy of Earth Defense Command. We protect Kethvar because he came to us seeking help. That's what humans do. Another pause. Even when protecting him means your own death. Especially then, Ryan replied. Kethvar stepped forward and spoke into the communicator in his own language. A rapid exchange followed between him and the Admiral. Finally, Kethvar turned to the humans. Admiral Vekmer wants to understand why you fight for someone who brings you no benefit. Jake answered simply, because it's the right thing to do. The Zephyrian ships stopped firing. For several minutes, only static came through the communication system. Then Admiral Vekmer spoke again. Colonel Murphy, we wish to discuss terms. What kind of terms? Ryan asked. Terms for coexistence between our peoples. It appears we have much to learn about human motivations. Rachel looked at her data displays, showing years of Zephyrian research into human warfare. Maybe they're starting to understand that there's more to humans than just being good at war. Kethfer nodded slowly. Perhaps my people can learn that humans fight not because they love war, but because they love what they are protecting. Ryan opened communications with the Zephyrian fleet. Admiral, we're ready to talk. But first, you need to understand something about humans. What is that, Colonel?